Earth, Chicago, Illinois. 31 years earlier. The apartment smelled like burned coffee and old textbooks, which was how Maya Mercer knew she was home. She was 9 years old, small for her age, with dark brown eyes that her mother always said looked like they were looking through walls. She wore the same blue hoodie she had worn for 3 days in a row because she liked how it felt, and she was sitting on the kitchen floor. Not at the table, never at the table was for homework and homework was boring, surrounded by pieces of a broken microwave, a dead clock radio, a tangle of copper wire she had pulled from behind the washing machine, and 6 library books stacked in a tower that was slightly taller than she was. Her older brother Danny, 14 years old and very proud of his new sneakers, stepped over her without looking down. "You're gonna electrocute yourself," he said, heading for the refrigerator. "I already did twice," Maya said without looking up. "It wasn't bad. It just made my fingers feel weird." Danny stopped with his hand on the refrigerator door. He looked back at her. "What are you even building?" Maya held up a piece of curved metal housing, examined it, set it down, and picked up a spool of wire. "A signal amplifier," she said. "A what?" "Something that makes signals louder. Farther. So you can hear things that are far away." She paused, tilted her head. "Or so things far away can hear you." Danny grabbed his sandwich and left the kitchen. He didn't understand his sister and he had learned it was easier to simply respect that fact and move on. Maya stayed on the kitchen floor for 4 more hours. By the time her mother came home from her second shift at the hospital, tired and smelling like antiseptic and cafeteria soup, Maya had built something. It didn't look like much. A lumpy, tangled, jury-rigged box of salvaged parts wrapped in copper wire with a bent coat hanger sticking out of the top. Her mother stood in the kitchen doorway. She looked at the box. She looked at her daughter. "Baby," she said carefully, "did you take apart my microwave?" "It was already broken," Maya said. "Mom, listen." She turned a dial she had made from a jar lid and a thumbtack. The box crackled. And then, through the crackle, there was something. A sound. Not a radio station. Not a television program. Something else. A pattern. Repeating. Rising and falling in a rhythm that sounded almost but not quite like music. Maya's mother sat down on the kitchen floor next to her daughter. She was tired in every bone in her body. She had worked 16 hours. Her feet hurt and her back hurt and she still had to pay this month's electric bill. But she sat down on the kitchen floor and she listened. "What is that?" she asked. "I don't know yet," Maya said. Her dark eyes were very bright. "But it keeps repeating. Every 47 minutes. Same pattern. Same length. It's not from a satellite. Satellites don't pulse like that." She looked at her mother. "Mom, I think it's from far away." Her mother looked at the box. Then she looked at her daughter. Then she did the thing she always did when Maya said something that was either completely ridiculous or completely brilliant. She decided it was probably both and she said, "Okay. So what do we do?" Maya's face broke into a huge smile. "We listen," she said. "And then we answer." Her mother's name was Dr. Patricia Mercer. She was not a scientist. She was a nurse, a practical, hard-working woman who understood bodies and medicine and the specific language of people in pain. But she had raised 2 children alone after their father left when Maya was 4, and she had learned long ago that the most important skill in the world was listening to what a situation actually required. What Maya required was not discouragement. What Maya required was resources. Patricia Mercer called in a favor from a friend at the University of Illinois. The friend was a physics professor named Dr. Robert Casey, who had a beard that hadn't been trimmed in 3 years and an office that made Maya's kitchen floor look organized. Dr. Casey came over on a Saturday morning, looked at Maya's box, asked her 3 questions about how she had built it, and then sat back in his chair with an expression that Patricia had never seen on an adult's face before. It was the look of someone who had just realized they were in the presence of something they couldn't fully explain. "Where did you learn signal theory?" he asked Maya. "Library," she said. "And YouTube. But mostly I just thought about it." "You just thought about it?" "I have a lot of thoughts," Maya said seriously. Dr. Casey came back the following Saturday. And the Saturday after that. And the one after that. He brought better equipment each time. A used radio telescope receiver he borrowed from the university's storage room, a signal analyzer, a laptop with software that Maya had already taught herself to use within 20 minutes of first seeing it. They analyzed the signal together. Took 3 months. What they found changed everything. The signal was not from a satellite. It was not from a natural phenomenon, not a pulsar, not a magnetar, not any known astronomical source. It was modulated. Deliberately. It contained mathematical structures that repeated in patterns too complex to be random and too regular to be natural. It was, Dr. Casey told Patricia Mercer privately in her kitchen while Maya slept, communication. Someone was talking. The signal was passing through Earth's neighborhood on its way somewhere else, and Maya's little box of salvaged microwave parts had caught the edge of it. You need to tell someone, Patricia said. I know, Dr. Casey said. He looked at his coffee cup. The question is who? Maya Mercer was 10 years old when the government came to her apartment. They came in plain clothes, which was meant to be subtle. They were not subtle. 3 large people in clothes that were too neat and cars that were too clean and expressions that were too carefully neutral parked in front of her building on a Tuesday afternoon. Maya watched them from the window. Those are government people, she told Danny. How do you know? Their shoes, she said. People wear their shoes like they belong to them. Those people are wearing their shoes like tools. Danny had no idea what that meant. But 20 minutes later, when the people knocked on their door and showed badges and asked for Dr. Robert Casey and his young assistant, he thought about it. The government people, they turned out to be from a department that Patricia was quietly told she could not repeat the name of, and that the documentation of this visit would be classified, were polite. They were interested. They were very careful not to let Maya see how interested they were, which was a mistake because Maya noticed the care. They asked her questions. She answered them. She answered some of them incorrectly on purpose just to see what they would do. They did not notice. She answered correctly after that. At the end of the visit, the woman in charge, short, precise, with gray hair cut close to her head, looked at Maya with an expression that was professionally neutral and said, "You're very talented, young lady." "I know," Maya said. "What are you going to do about my signal?" The woman smiled in the way adults smile when they are deciding not to answer. "We're going to look into it. Will you tell me what you find? We'll be in touch." Maya watched them leave from the window. Her mother came and stood behind her and put her hands on her shoulders. "Are you scared?" Patricia asked. "No," Maya said. "I'm curious." She watched the 2 clean cars drive away. "Mom, that signal, whatever is making it, it doesn't know we heard it. It doesn't know we exist." She was quiet for a moment. "I want to know what happens when they find out." Patricia Mercer hugged her daughter from behind and rested her chin on the top of Maya's head and looked out the window at the street where the government cars were already gone. "So do I, baby," she said. "So do I." Maya grew up. This is not a simple statement. Growing up for Maya Mercer was not the ordinary business of years in school and gradual accumulation of experience. Growing up for Maya was more like a fire reaching more and more fuel. Each new thing she learned became a platform for the next thing and the next and the next. By the time she was 14, she had taught herself 4 programming languages. By 16, she had co-authored a theoretical paper on long-range signal propagation that was published under Dr. Casey's name because no journal in the country would believe a teenager had written it. By 18, she had been recruited, very quietly and with several documents her mother was asked to sign and then not keep copies of, into a government program she was told was called the SETI Advanced Research Division. It was not called that. It was called Project Veil. And Project Veil was not about searching for extraterrestrial intelligence. By the time Maya Mercer walked through the doors of the facility in Nevada where Project Veil was headquartered, humanity had known about the Galactic Cooperative for 11 years. They had intercepted 37 distinct signal types from at least 12 different species. They had translated enough to understand the broad shape of what was out there. A vast, ancient network of civilizations spread across thousands of star systems, bound by agreements and rivalries and a complex political structure that humans couldn't fully map but could begin to understand. They had also understood something else. Something that the people who ran Project Veil had decided with quiet, absolute certainty. Humanity was not ready to be discovered. Not because humans were weak. Not because humans were afraid. Because humanity, for the first time in its entire history, had a choice. It could announce itself. Step into the light. Say here we are to a galaxy that had no idea it existed. Or it could wait. It could listen. It could learn. It could prepare. It could choose the moment of its own revealing. Project Veil chose the second option. And Maya Mercer, at 18 years old, small and fierce and burning with a curiosity that had never once dimmed since she sat on her kitchen floor with a broken microwave and a coat hanger antenna, walked into the facility in Nevada and said to the director who met her at the door, "All right, tell me everything. And then tell me what you need me to build." Project Veil Facility Nevada 23 years before the decloaking. The director's name was General Howard Crane. He was 60 years old, built like someone who had once been very athletic and had not quite let go of it, with a white crew cut and eyes the color of winter sky. He had spent 30 years in the Air Force before moving to an assignment so classified that his own wife thought he worked in aerospace logistics. He met Maya Mercer at the door of the facility because he made a point of personally meeting every new recruit. He had done it for 20 years. He believed you could tell more about a person from that first 30 seconds than from their entire file. He looked at Maya, 18, small, wearing a backpack that was slightly too heavy for her frame, looking at everything with those dark eyes that seemed to be recording rather than simply seeing, and he said, "Miss Mercer, your signal amplifier. The one you built at 9. How did you know it would work?" Maya looked at him. "It didn't work," she said. "Not the way I meant it to. It caught the signal by accident. The geometry of the wire configuration I used happened to be tuned to the right frequency range. I got lucky." General Crane nodded slowly. "And the paper you published at 16 on signal propagation. Was that luck?" "No," she said. "That was work." He nodded again. He stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. "Good," he said. "We have a lot of work to do." Project Veil operated out of a facility that, from the outside, looked like a moderately sized military installation. Some administrative buildings, some hangars, some antennas, the kind of place that appeared on no civilian map and that passing drivers on the distant highway could barely see through the desert heat shimmer. From the outside it looked like it might employ 200 or 300 people. It employed 6,000. Underground. Carved into the Nevada rock across 17 sublevels, the facility was one of the most advanced scientific and engineering complexes ever built by human hands. There were laboratories, fabrication facilities, test ranges, living quarters, medical centers, archives, and, on the deepest level, level 17, accessible only by a single elevator that required 3 separate biometric confirmations, the place Maya would eventually come to think of as simply the heart. On Maya's first day, she was given a tour by a young man named Specialist Derek Chin, who was 22, had a quick smile, and had clearly given this tour many times but managed to make it feel like the first time. He showed her the upper levels, the Signal Analysis Center, the Translation Labs, the Xenobiology Division, the Physics Research Wings, and explained the basic structure of the organization. "We've been operating for 16 years, Derek told her as they walked through the long, clean corridors of Level 4. "Full knowledge of the cooperative's existence for 11 years. We've got translation capacity on 7 languages, partial capacity on 4 more. We know their political structure well enough to write a graduate thesis on it. We know their technology in broad terms, faster than light travel, energy weapons, biointegrated computing. We know their military doctrine." Maya walked and listened. She was already looking at everything, the equipment in the labs they passed, the faces of the researchers, the subtle signs of stress or excitement or fatigue in the way people held themselves. "And they know nothing about us?" she asked. "They know we exist," Derek said. "They've detected signs of industrial civilization on Earth. Radio waves, light pollution, atmospheric changes. But they don't know we're aware of them. As far as the cooperative knows, Earth is a primitive planet that has recently made some preliminary moves towards space exploration and is generally not worth watching closely." He paused. "They've had a few debates in their assembly about what to do about us. The consensus is not much. Some of their species want to make contact eventually. Some want to establish a resource extraction relationship. Some want to quarantine us. The most common view is that we're a curiosity that doesn't require action yet." "And what do they think of us as a species?" Maya asked. Derek was quiet for a moment. They had reached a section of corridor that passed a large display screen showing a translated feed from a cooperative broadcast channel. It was playing what appeared to be some kind of political commentary program, 3 alien figures of different species, their translated voices rendered in flat English by the project's AI translation system, discussing various topics. Maya stopped. On screen one of the figures said something. The translation read, "The humans, yes, they're still doing their little things on their little planet. One of their probes has now left their solar system. Very sweet. Like a child taking its first steps before the parents have even noticed. Ha." The other figures made sounds that the translation system labeled. Laughter, high confidence. Maya looked at the screen for a long moment. Then she looked at Derek. "I see," she said. "Yeah," Derek said quietly. "That's pretty common." Maya looked back at the screen. The creatures on it had moved on to another topic. Her face was calm and unreadable, but her dark eyes were doing the thing they did, recording, storing, processing. "Take me to level 17, she said. Derek blinked. "You haven't been cleared for level 17 yet. That takes. How long?" "Usually 6 months minimum, background review, psych evaluation. Talk to General Crane, Maya said. She was still looking at the screen, though the program had changed. Tell him I want to see the heart. Tell him I have an idea. She was cleared for level 17 in 3 weeks. This was unprecedented. Derek later told her it was the fastest level 17 clearance in the project's history. Maya did not find this surprising. She had explained her idea to General Crane in a 2-hour meeting that she had prepared for by not sleeping for 36 hours because she wanted to be absolutely certain she had thought through every angle. When she finished explaining, General Crane sat in silence for almost 2 full minutes. Then he said, "If you can actually build this, it changes everything." "I know," Maya said. The idea was this: cloaking. Not metaphorical cloaking, not just staying quiet. Actual, physical, technological cloaking. A system that could render human ships, stations, even eventually larger structures, invisible to every detection method the Galactic Cooperative used. Maya had spent 2 years studying every intercepted piece of information about cooperative sensor technology, and she had found something that nobody else had identified: a fundamental assumption built into all cooperative sensor design. The cooperative assumed that any spacefaring civilization would be generating signals, energy emissions, propulsion signatures, communication broadcasts. Their sensors were designed to detect presence, activity, emission. They were not designed to detect absence. They had no concept of a civilization that would choose to be electromagnetically silent in space, because no civilization in their experience had ever done so. Why would you? Space was huge and communication was necessary, and the only reason to be silent was if you were weak and hiding, and weak civilizations didn't make it to space. Humanity had been electromagnetically loud on its own planet for a century. But that loudness came from a planet, from a fixed location, the way a campfire is visible from a distance. A ship, a human ship, designed from the beginning with silence as its first principle, with every emission system contained and directed and controlled, could be invisible. If you also bent the light around it, which Maya had a theory about. Her theory involved a specific application of metamaterial physics that she had been developing in her own notebooks since she was 16. It was not complete. It would take years of research and resources she didn't currently have. But the direction was sound. General Crane had looked at her across the conference table and said, "How long?" 10 years, Maya said. "Maybe 15. He nodded. "And when it's done, what do we do with it?" Maya's answer was immediate. "We build a fleet," she said. "We build the biggest, best, most capable fleet we can. We hide it behind our cloaking. We listen to them. We learn from them. We let them laugh." She paused. "And then, when we are absolutely ready, not one day before, we let them see us." General Crane looked at her for a long time. "And when they see us," he said slowly, "what do you want them to understand?" Maya's answer was quiet and completely certain. "That silence," she said, "was a choice. She built it in 12 years. Not alone, she built a team recruited from the best minds in physics, engineering, materials science, computing, and 7 other disciplines that she pulled from universities and private research labs, and sometimes from very unlikely places, always with General Crane's quiet authorization and always through channels that left no visible trail. Her team grew from 6 people to 60 to 600. They worked in the heart, on level 17, and they built things that had never existed before. The metamaterial cloaking array. The emission suppression system. The signal absorption hull. The controlled energy recycling architecture. None of these things had official names at first. They were called by whatever the team working on them decided to call them, which led to project code names that included the Blanket, the Whisper, the Shadow Skin, and, for reasons no one could fully explain but everyone agreed made perfect sense, Margaret. Margaret was the full integration system. Margaret was the thing that made all the pieces work together. Margaret took 4 years to develop and twice nearly broke Maya entirely. There were nights when she sat in her lab at 2 in the morning and stared at results that didn't make sense and felt the particular kind of despair that only comes when you know that what you're trying to do is possible but you can't see the path to it. On those nights she called her mother. Patricia Mercer, now retired from nursing, living in a better apartment in a better part of Chicago that Maya's government salary had helped make possible, would answer the phone at whatever hour it was and listen to her daughter's voice and say exactly the right things. She didn't understand the science, she had never pretended to. But she understood her daughter. She understood the rhythm of Maya's mind. She knew when Maya needed to be told to sleep and when she needed to be told to keep going and when she just needed someone to sit on the other end of the phone in silence so she didn't feel alone in the dark. During the 4th year of working on Margaret, Patricia Mercer was diagnosed with early-stage heart disease. Maya flew to Chicago and spent a week with her mother. She sat on the kitchen floor of the new apartment, old habit, old comfort, and leaned against her mother's legs while Patricia watched television, and she thought about signals and distance and the sound of something you love getting farther away. "You're going to fix it," Patricia told her one evening. "Mom, I'm a physicist, not a cardiologist." "I mean the thing you're building," Patricia said. "Whatever it is. You're going to fix the part that isn't working." Maya looked up at her mother. "How do you know?" "Because it's not working yet," Patricia said, with absolute and completely simple certainty. "And you've never stopped it, not yet." Maya flew back to Nevada the next morning. She sat in her lab. She looked at the integration problem from a completely different angle, not from the emission side, not from the material side, but from the perspective of the signal itself. What did the signal want to do? Where did it want to go? She had Margaret working in 11 days. The first full-scale cloaking test was conducted on a modified cargo vessel in the outer solar system, 300 million miles from Earth, monitored by 17 remote sensor arrays. The team was watching from level 17. Maya stood at the center console with her hands in her pockets, watching the main display. The ship was there on the screen. A clear signal. Clean and visible. Then Maya keyed the test activation. The signal vanished. Not reduced. Not dampened. Not faded. Vanished. Gone. Zero return from every sensor array. The ship was 300 million miles away and it was completely, absolutely, perfectly invisible. The control room was silent for almost 10 seconds. Then someone in the back, Derek Chin, who had given her the tour on her first day and had been on her team for 9 years, started clapping. Slowly at first, and then faster, and then everyone was clapping, and then people were shouting, and then Maya was being hugged from 3 directions at once, which was not her preferred mode of physical interaction, but she permitted it because she understood the emotion and she felt some of it herself. General Crane stood next to her at the console. He looked at the empty space on the display where the ship had been. HFY, he said quietly. He had picked up the phrase from Maya, who had picked it up from a member of her team from Lahore who said it when things changed irrevocably. It meant something like, "From this moment on, everything is different. The world just changed and nobody knows it yet." "Not yet," Maya agreed. She looked at the empty space on the display. "But they will." Project Vale Nevada 14 years before the decloaking. The woman who would command the fleet was not Maya's choice. Maya didn't make that kind of decision, she built things, not command structures. But when General Crane introduced them, Maya understood immediately why the choice had been made. Commander Cassandra Mercer, no relation to Maya, a coincidence that they both found mildly interesting, was 38 years old, a naval commander with a record that read like someone had taken every difficult situation in modern military history and asked one person to solve all of them. She had 2 Navy Crosses, 3 Distinguished Service Medals, and a commendation from a foreign government that was classified because the operation it related to was classified and would probably remain so forever. She was tall, lean, with close-cropped dark hair going silver at the temples and green eyes that had the same quality as Maya's dark ones. They were looking at everything all the time, storing it. She walked like someone who had decided exactly how much energy every movement required and was not going to spend 1 unit more. Maya liked her immediately. Which was unusual because Maya did not immediately like most people. They were introduced in General Crane's office. Crane had told Cassandra the full picture, everything, all of it, and Cassandra had listened to the 2-hour briefing with total stillness, asking exactly 3 questions at precisely the right moments, and then sat in silence for 90 seconds before saying, "When do I start?" When Maya was introduced, Cassandra looked at her for a moment and said, "The cloaking system. You built it yourself?" "With a team," Maya said. "But the core architecture was yours." "Yes." Cassandra nodded. "I want to understand it. Completely. Not the physics, I won't understand the physics. But the operational parameters. The limits. The failure modes. Everything it can't do." "That's a very specific thing to ask about," Maya said. "Every system has limits," Cassandra said. "I need to know the limits so I know what not to do. I can work with any capability if I know its edges." Maya looked at her for a moment. Then she said, "Monday morning. Lap 7. Bring coffee. It'll take most of the day." Cassandra arrived Monday morning with coffee for both of them. She stayed for 2 days. Over the following 3 years they became, not friends exactly because both of them had a complicated relationship with that word, but something that had the weight of friendship without all its ordinary social mechanics. They respected each other profoundly and completely. They trusted each other's judgment in their respective domains absolutely. And they had a specific kind of shorthand that develops between people who spend a lot of time solving the same problem from different directions. Cassandra was promoted to captain, then to rear admiral as the fleet program grew. The fleet, built in the outer solar system, assembled piece by piece with ships that launched from Earth in clusters and then vanished behind their cloaking systems before they could be observed by any cooperative sensor, was the largest construction project in human history and also the most secret. 26 warships, ranging from destroyer class to something that human commanders quietly called the Hammer, a vessel 4 kilometers long, bristling with weapons systems that had been developed partly by reverse engineering intercepted cooperative technology and partly by innovations that were entirely human, all of them invisible, all of them waiting. Cassandra commanded the Hammer. She renamed it officially as UES Steadfast. Unofficially, her crew called it the Quiet. Maya visited the Quiet twice, traveling in a shuttle that decloaked briefly at the outer solar system coordinates where the ship orbited in permanent darkness. Walking through the corridors of the Steadfast was one of the most profound experiences of her life. It was vast and real and full of people, young faces, competent faces, faces that were ready, and it had been built from the idea she had explained to General Crane in a conference room when she was 18 years old. On her second visit, Maya stood with Cassandra on the bridge of the Steadfast and looked at the main display, the deep black of space, the distant sun a bright point, and somewhere in that dark the faint shimmer of 25 other warships waiting in their silence. "Are you afraid?" Maya asked. Cassandra thought about the question seriously, which was the only way she thought about any question. "I'm afraid of making a mistake," she said. "I'm afraid of missing something important in their strategic doctrine that I didn't find in the intercepts. I'm afraid of being too early or too late." She paused. "I'm not afraid of them. They're laughing at us," Maya said. She said it the way someone states a fact, flat, clear, without heat. "Right now, somewhere in that assembly, they're laughing." "I know," Cassandra said. She looked at the display. "Let them have it. Every laugh they use now is one they won't have later." Maya was quiet for a moment. "When?" she asked. Cassandra turned to look at her. "When do we decloak?" "Yes." Cassandra turned back to the display. "When they do something that requires it," she said. "We don't reveal ourselves for theater. We reveal ourselves when there's a reason that matters." Maya nodded. She had expected that answer and she agreed with it. She didn't know, standing there in that corridor with the vast dark of space outside and 26 warships waiting in silence, that the reason was coming. That it was already in motion, 300 light-years away, in the decision chambers of a species that had never once imagined what it might mean to laugh at the wrong thing. Vreth Home System, the Galactic Cooperative Assembly 11 years before the decloaking. Supreme Commander Vrethaken was having what he privately considered a good day. The assembly was in session, which Vrethaken generally disliked because the assembly involved 47 species all trying to talk at once, which produced a noise level that even the translation system struggled with. But today's agenda included the ratification of the Vreth Fleet Expansion Protocol, a proposal Vrethaken had been working toward for 6 years that would give the Vreth Directorate authority to station military assets in 17 new star systems, including 3 that were currently disputed with the Kalori Collective. The Kalori were not happy. Their ambassador, a creature whose translated name was Delegate Third Current Bright, had been objecting for 40 minutes with a particular kind of elaborate, circular, technically correct but practically useless rhetoric that the Kalori were famous for. Vrethaken waited. He was good at waiting. He was, according to the Vreth Strategic Academy's assessment, one of the finest military commanders the cooperative had produced in 300 years. He was also, and this was a quality that the Academy did not formally assess but that his subordinates understood intimately, contemptuous. Not secretly, openly. He found most other species inferior. He found their arguments tedious. He found their concerns about Vreth expansion tiresome. He believed, with a certainty so deep it had passed through conviction into simple fact in his mind, that the Vreth were the natural leaders of the cooperative and that any species that disagreed with this was simply not yet educated to the correct conclusion. His aide, a young officer named Subcommander Vrethkos, leaned toward him and said quietly, "The human probe is in the news cycle again." One of their broadcast channels attempted to transmit a greeting sequence to the assembly frequency. Vrethaken did not look away from the assembly floor. And? It was incoherent. Apparently they're still using radio frequency transmission. They addressed it to any intelligent life that might be listening. Vrethkos's tone carried the particular flatness of someone reporting information they found too trivial to bother finding amusing. It was intercepted by standard monitoring. No response was sent. Vrethaken exhaled slowly. He thought about the humans, the tiny, soft, water planet species who had been noisily blundering around the edges of their own solar system for the last century, clearly thrilled with themselves. Who sent radio greetings into the void as if the void were listening and cared. Who had no idea that the very frequency they were broadcasting on was monitored by 17 different cooperative listening posts, all of which had filed the greeting under Category 7, Primitive Civilization Contact Attempt, no action required. He allowed himself a small sound. Not quite a laugh. The Vreth didn't laugh the way softer species did, it was more of a resonant exhale, low-pitched, rhythmic. It conveyed the same thing. Across the assembly chamber, 2 Dravari delegates who had also been monitoring the human broadcast news item heard his sound and matched it with their own versions. Several Sanhai clicked their mandibles in the Sanhai expression of amused contempt. Little water planet, one of the Dravari murmured to the other in their own language, not realizing that the Project Veil translation system, operating from a monitoring station 11 light hours away, was recording every word. Shouting at the stars and wondering why no one answers. The other Dravari made the sound that meant, as if an answer would even help them. In Nevada, in the translation lab on level 9, a young analyst named Specialist Rosa Vasquez read the transcript on her screen. She was 25 years old, second generation from San Antonio, and she had been working in Project Veil's translation division for 2 years. She was good at her job, very good, and part of what made her good was that she felt the translations. She didn't just read the words. She understood what was behind them. She read the Dravari exchange. She read Vrethaken's contemptuous exhale, described in clinical language by the system's emotional tone decoder. She read the casual dismissal of humanity written in the small moment of a translated conversation between 2 creatures who would never have imagined anyone was listening. She took a screenshot. She attached it to a report. She sent the report to her section chief with a note that said, "Another one for the file. They're getting more casual about it. They're not even being specifically contemptuous anymore, it's just background assumption. We've moved from being a joke to being wallpaper." Her section chief forwarded the report to the Deputy Director of Intelligence. The Deputy Director forwarded it to General Crane. General Crane read it on a Thursday morning with his first cup of coffee. He read it twice. He set it down on his desk and looked at the wall for a while. Then he picked up the phone and called Cassandra Mercer. "I want the fleet readiness assessment updated," he said. "All ships. I want it by end of month." "Is something happening?" Cassandra asked. "Not yet," General Crane said. "But something is building." He paused. "They're not watching us at all, Cass. Not even a little. They've written us off so completely that they don't even bother thinking about what we might be doing." Another pause. "I find that either very comforting or very concerning, and I haven't decided which." "Both?" Cassandra said immediately. "It's always both. Galactic Cooperative Outer Territories 8 years before the decloaking. It started with a species called the Fun. The Fun were not in the Galactic Cooperative. They had been invited 3 times over the course of 100 years and had declined 3 times, which was their right. They were an old species, not as old as the Vreth, but old enough, with a complex culture and a technology level that made them fully capable of defending themselves in ordinary circumstances. The Fun's home system was in what the cooperative designated as Sector 7 Outer, a region at the edge of the cooperative's effective reach, where the political gravity of the assembly was weak and the military reach of the major powers was stretched thin. The Vreth Fleet Expansion Protocol, ratified with a narrow majority after 6 hours of assembly debate, gave Vrethaken authority to station military assets in that sector. The Fun did not want Vreth military assets in their sector. What happened over the following 3 years was a thing that has no clean name in human political vocabulary. It wasn't quite a war, not at first. It was a pressure. A squeeze. Vreth ships appeared in the Fun system's outer reaches. Vreth diplomatic missions arrived and stated terms that were technically not ultimatums but functioned as ultimatums. Fun shipping was inspected, delayed, disrupted. Trade routes that the Fun depended on were closed through Vreth-controlled corridors without explanation. The Fun protested to the Cooperative Assembly. The Assembly expressed concern. The Vreth explained that they were simply exercising their rights under the Fleet Expansion Protocol. The Assembly debated. The Fun continued to be squeezed. Project Veil watched all of it. Maya watched it from her lab, reading translated transcripts between periods of her own ongoing research. She watched the Fun pleas to the Assembly, dignified, precise, increasingly desperate, and the Assembly's carefully worded expressions of sympathy that meant nothing. She watched Vrethaken's communications with his field commanders, intercepted and translated, which were notable for their absolute confidence and their total contempt for anyone who objected. Cassandra watched it from the bridge of the Steadfast, running scenarios. And then, in the 5th year of what the cooperative euphemistically called the Fin integration process, the Vreth fleet destroyed the Fin's primary orbital station. It was not called an attack. Vrethaken characterized it in his official communication to the Assembly as a response to a Fin military provocation, the provocation being that a Fin defense ship had powered its weapon systems in the presence of a Vreth patrol, which under Vreth military doctrine was classified as an act of aggression. 317 Fin workers were on the station when it was destroyed. There were no survivors. The Assembly debated for 6 days. A resolution condemning the action failed to achieve a majority because the Vreth delegation threatened to withdraw from the Assembly entirely if any such resolution passed, and the Assembly, as it had done before and would do again, valued its own coherence over justice. On day 7 of the debate, while the Assembly was still arguing, a Vreth fleet of 40 vessels entered the Fin home system. Not a patrol. Not a diplomatic mission. A fleet. Maya was in her lab when she got the alert. She had been working on a refinement to the cloaking system, a third-generation improvement that reduced the energy signature to essentially nothing, a project she had been calling the Final Whisper. She set down her work and read the intelligence report on her screen. She read it twice. Then she walked to her phone and called Cassandra. "I just read the Fin report," Maya said. "No preamble." "They didn't do preamble." "So did I," Cassandra said. There was something in her voice that Maya had not heard before. Not anger. Cassandra was always controlled, always precise. This was something quieter than anger. Something colder. "It's happening," Maya said. "Yes," Cassandra said. "What do we do?" There was a pause. "I need to talk to Crane," Cassandra said. "And you need to talk to Crane. And then we all need to talk to each other." Another pause. "Maya. The Final Whisper. Is it ready for deployment?" Maya looked at her workbench. At the schematics on her screen. At the 3 years of work that had been proceeding on the assumption that she would have more time. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. "You have 1, Cassandra said. "I'll explain to Crane." Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, "Cass. They're about to erase the Fin." "I know," Cassandra said. And there it was again, that cold, quiet thing in her voice. "I've been watching them for 14 years. I've listened to every laugh. I've watched them dismiss every species that wasn't strong enough to make them stop." Pause. "SYMJHY Maya. This is the reason. You said you'd wait for a reason that mattered." "Yes," Cassandra said. "I did." Maya worked for 9 days on the Final Whisper. She did not sleep more than 2 hours in any single stretch. She drank an amount of coffee that her physician would have described as medically irresponsible. She had 2 of her senior engineers, Marcus Webb and Dr. Aisha Okonkwo, working alongside her in rotating 16-hour shifts, because even they couldn't keep up with the pace she was setting. On the morning of the 10th day she ran the full integration test. The results came back in 7 minutes. She looked at the numbers. She checked them. She ran the test again. Same numbers. She called Marcus over. He looked at the results. He checked them. He looked at her. "Maya," he said. "This is better than perfect." "I know," she said. She was very tired and not yet ready to feel what she felt about what the numbers meant. "I know." She picked up the phone. "Cass," she said. "It's ready?" On the other end of the line, on the bridge of the Steadfast in the cold dark of the outer solar system, Admiral Cassandra Mercer closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were clear and certain. "Thank you," she said. "Now get some sleep. You're going to want to be awake for this." U.S. Steadfast Outer Solar System, 6 years before the decloaking. The briefing room of the Steadfast held 120 senior officers. Every ship in the fleet was represented, either physically with captains and first officers present, or by secure holographic link. The holograms were ghostly blue shapes in the seats around the table, clear enough to show faces, to show expressions. Cassandra stood at the head of the table. She had her hands clasped behind her back. She looked at the faces, physical and projected, and she felt the weight of the room. Not fear. These were not people who were afraid. But there was a gravity here, a recognition of moment, that every face in the room reflected. "I'm going to tell you the full situation," she said. "All of it. No classified compartments in this room right now. You need to understand everything to do what I'm going to ask you to do." She told them about the Fin. She told them about the orbital station. 317 dead. She told them about the Vreth fleet in the Fin home system. She told them about the assembly's failure to act. She displayed intercepted communications from Vrethaken to his field commanders, plans for full system integration, which was the Vreth term for what it meant in practice, subjugation, the removal of Fun autonomy, the installation of Vreth administration, the stripping of Fun resources for Vreth benefit. The cooperative assembly will not stop this, she said. We know this because we've watched them for 14 years and we've never once seen them stop the Vreth when the Vreth decided to act. The assembly values its own survival over the survival of any individual member species. The Fun are not members. The assembly has no formal obligation to them. And the Vreth know this. She paused. The room was completely silent. I want to be clear about something, she continued. We are not going to war with the Vreth Directorate. We are not seeking conflict with any species in the cooperative. We are not going to fire the first shot. That is not what this is. What this is an introduction. She looked around the room. We have been silent for 60 years. We have listened. We have learned. We have built. We have been careful and patient and deliberate. And now we are going to step out of the dark and let the galaxy see us. She paused. The question is how we do that. She pulled up a display. A three-dimensional map of the Fun system. The home planet, 2 inhabited moons, the debris field where the orbital station had been, the 40 Vreth vessels in the system. The Finn defense fleet, 12 ships heavily outgunned, positioned in a defensive formation around the home planet. We are going to arrive in the Fun system, Cassandra said. We are going to position ourselves between the Vreth fleet and the Fun home planet. We are going to decloak all 26 ships simultaneously, and we are going to do it in a way that makes our capability absolutely clear. She looked at the room. And then we are going to talk. A voice from one of the holographic seats, Captain James Okafor of the UES Resolute, said, What do we say? Cassandra thought for a moment. The truth, she said. Simply. Another voice, this one physical, sitting at the table, Captain Sarah Lynn of the U.S. Northern Star. And if they don't listen? If the Vreth attack anyway? Cassandra looked at her steadily. Then we respond, she said. And they will learn something important about what it means to attack a human ship. The room processed this. Faces moved through calculations. Lieutenant Commander Frank Torres, Cassandra's tactical officer, raised his hand. Ma'am. The Vreth fleet, 40 vessels. We have 26. By numerical count. Numbers aren't the whole equation, Frank, Cassandra said, which was the gentlest way she ever corrected anyone. What else do we know about the Vreth fleet? They're not cloaked, Frank said immediately. He understood what she was driving at. Their sensor systems are designed for detecting energy emissions. We will be invisible to them until we choose not to be. We will know their exact position, formation, and capability from the moment we enter the system. They will not know we are there. He paused. Until we tell them. Correct, Cassandra said. She looked around the room one more time. At the faces. At the readiness in them. At the particular expression that humans get when they have been careful and patient and prepared and the moment has finally arrived. We depart in 48 hours. Every ship at full operational readiness. We enter the Fun system cloaked. We position. We wait for my signal. She straightened. And then, Caro, we let them see us. The 48 hours before departure were full. On the Steadfast, they were full in the way that time before large things is always full, with preparation that is partly practical and partly something older, something that has to do with the human need to make peace with what is coming. People checked systems that had already been checked. People wrote messages home that they had been told they could not send yet. People talked to each other in the corridors and the mess hall and the engine rooms with the particular quality of conversation that happens when everyone knows that something important is about to begin. Maya was on the Steadfast for this. She had come up on the shuttle 2 days earlier, officially to oversee the installation of the final Whisper upgrades on the fleet flagship. Unofficially, she was there because she could not imagine being anywhere else. She had not slept well. She sat in the small cabin they had given her and thought about her mother. Patricia Mercer's heart disease had progressed. Not dramatically, not dangerously, but enough that Maya thought about it. She thought about the signal she had caught on her kitchen floor at 9 years old. She thought about Dr. Casey and his untrimmed beard. She thought about the government people with their tool-like shoes. She thought about 16 years of work. Her work, the work of thousands of people she had recruited and trained and pushed and thanked and sometimes made cry and always relied on. She thought about silence. About choice. About what it meant to reveal yourself. At 0300 hours ship time, she gave up on sleeping and went to the bridge. Cassandra was there as Maya had known she would be. Cassandra was almost always on the bridge during high readiness periods. She did not seem to need sleep the way other people did, or rather, she had trained herself to need it in such short, efficient intervals that she was effectively available at any hour. She was standing at the main display, looking at a tactical projection of the fund system that was updated every 20 minutes by the monitoring data from the long-range probes they had pre-positioned. She looked up when Maya came in. "Can't sleep either," Maya said. "I don't sleep before operations," Cassandra said. "I save it for after." Maya stood beside her and looked at the projection. The Vreth fleet in the fund system, 40 glowing markers. The Finn Defense Fleet, 12 markers clustered around the home planet. The orbital debris from the station that had been destroyed, scattered in a cloud that the display rendered as a faint gray haze. 317 people, Maya said. "Yes," Cassandra said. "And the assembly debated for 6 days and did nothing." "Yes." Maya was quiet for a moment. "We can't fix what's already happened." "No," Cassandra said. "We can't. But we can make sure it doesn't get worse." "That's the goal," Cassandra said. She looked at the display. Then she looked at Maya. "Why did you come to the bridge at 0300? Maya thought about it. "Because I built the ship," she said. "And I wanted to be in it when it goes." Cassandra looked at her for a moment. Then she said, "Go back to your cabin. Sleep if you can. We depart in 10 hours and I want you on the bridge when we arrive." She turned back to the display. "You should be there. You earned it." Maya went back to her cabin. She didn't sleep, but she rested, which was something. She thought about the word Karo and what it meant in the context of what was about to happen. A Punjabi word, she had been told, though she'd been told different things about its exact meaning, a word that might mean do it now or just do it or go ahead or now is the time, and thought about how there should be a word for the moment right before you do the thing you have been building toward your whole life. Maybe Karo was that word. Maybe that was why it felt right. Fun Home System Fun Defense Command 3 days before the decloaking. Admiral Finmarin Soda, the Fun title translated roughly to one who holds the line, had been awake for 41 hours. She sat in the command center of the Fun Planetary Defense Station, a low, wide room cut into the rock of the primary moon, and she looked at the tactical display that showed 40 Vreth vessels arranged in a formation she recognized. She recognized it because she had spent her career studying Vreth military doctrine, and this formation was the one the Vreth called the Close of Water, the formation they used when they were preparing to eliminate an opposing defensive capability before moving to planetary occupation. 40 vessels. She had 12. 12 against 40 would be a battle. The Close of Water formation against 12 would be a brief battle. She had 12. She had sent the last diplomatic message she intended to send, not to the Vreth, not to Vrethaken who had stopped receiving her messages 3 weeks ago and whose aides sent automated acknowledgement replies that said nothing, but to the Assembly. To every member species in the Assembly. 47 messages, each one translated into the appropriate language, each one containing the same core content. "We are being destroyed. We are asking for help. Please." She had received 31 replies. 28 of them expressed concern. 2 of them expressed deep concern. One of them, from a small cooperative member species called the ISS, expressed genuine distress and offered to raise the matter again in the next assembly session, which was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now was too late. Finmarin Soda looked at the display. She was not afraid, or rather, she was afraid, but it was a fear that had been present for so long it had become a kind of background condition, like the hum of the station's environmental systems. She had made her peace with it. What she felt now, looking at the 40 markers on the display, was something closer to a specific, precise, cold anger. Not at the Vreth. She had been angry at the Vreth and it had done nothing. She was angry at the galaxy. At the vast, old, complex, sophisticated galactic cooperative, which had 47 species and centuries of history and elaborate political structures and all the technology and communication capacity a civilization could ask for, and which had watched the Finn being destroyed and discussed it and expressed concern and done nothing. She was angry at the universe for being a place where the strong could do this and the rest could only watch and talk. Her second in command, a young officer named Fantala, approached her. "Admiral, the Vreth have begun repositioning. The analysis suggests they will begin offensive operations within 18 hours. "I know," Finmarin Soda said. "Your orders, Admiral?" She looked at the display for a long moment. At her 12 ships. At the 40 markers. At the debris cloud where the orbital station had been, where 317 of her people had been. "Defensive formation," she said. "Maximum shield capacity. We make them work for every meter." She paused. And open every communication channel we have. Every frequency. Broad spectrum. If anything is out there, anything at all, I want them to hear us. What should the message say? Fantala asked. Finmarin Soda thought for a moment. Then she said, the truth. We are the Fun. We are here. We are not gone yet. If anyone is listening, please. Fantala transmitted the message. It went out on every frequency the Fun communication system could produce, in every format they knew how to use, coded and uncoded, tight beam and broadcast, on the old radio frequencies and the quantum entangled channels and everything in between. It went out into the dark. It traveled at the speed of light and faster, on the channels that bent space, in every direction the Fun transmitters could reach. 11 light hours away, in a certain direction that the Fun had no reason to know about, it was received. On the bridge of the UES Steadfast, traveling cloaked through deep space toward the Fun system at a speed the Vreth would have called impossible for a species at humanity's supposed developmental level, Lieutenant Commander Priya Mehta, Chief Communications Officer, straightened in her chair. Admiral, she said. Her voice was very controlled. I'm receiving something. Cassandra was at the main display. She turned. Source. The Fun system. Broad spectrum broadcast. Every channel. Priya paused. It's a plea, ma'am? They're broadcasting across everything. They're asking for help. The bridge was quiet. Every face was turned toward the main display. Cassandra looked at Priya for a moment. Then she looked at her tactical display. They were 8 hours from the Fun system. 8 hours at current speed, which was something the cooperative would not have believed possible. Increase speed, she said. All ships, maximum safe transit velocity. I want to be there in 5 hours. Ma'am, Frank Torres said, at that velocity the energy signature. We're running cloaked, Frank. They won't see the signature. But I want to be there before anything else happens to those 12 ships. She looked at the display. And I want someone to compose a reply to that Fun transmission. What should we say? Priya asked. Cassandra thought for exactly 2 seconds. Tell them we heard you. We are coming. Hold your formation. That's all. In their language? In every language you can manage. If they're broadcasting on everything, respond on everything. I want them to hear it. Priya's hands moved over her console. The reply went out, tight beam, directed toward the Fun system, translated and formatted in 6 languages including Fun Standard and 3 of the most common cooperative diplomatic dialects. On the planet surface of the Fun home world, 300 kilometers below the Defense Command Station, millions of Fun were doing what people do when their world is about to end, holding each other, watching the sky, telling each other important things in the time remaining. On the defense station, Finmarin Soda was looking at the display and the 40 Vreth markers and calculating. And then her communications officer said, Admiral. Reply to our broadcast. Finmarin Soda looked up sharply. From whom? Unknown origin. Unknown language. No, wait. The system is translating. Pause. A long pause, the kind that happens when a translation system is processing something it has never encountered before. Admiral. It says, another pause. It says we heard you. We are coming. Hold your formation. Finmarin Soda stood very still. Who sent that? She asked. Unknown, her communications officer said. The transmission signature does not match any known species in the cooperative database. It doesn't match any species in our records at all. He looked up. Admiral. It's from a direction corresponding to a small, unremarkable star system in Sector 14 Inner. The system has 1 inhabited planet. He checked his data. The planet is classified in cooperative records as a Category 7 primitive civilization. He looked up again. The planet is called Earth. Finmarin Soda looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked back at her display. Hold the formation, she said to Fantala. All ships. Whatever it costs. We hold. Part 8, 5 hours. US Steadfast en route to the Fun system 5 hours before the decloaking. The 5 hours were the longest of Maya's life. She was on the bridge as Cassandra had promised. She had a seat at the secondary science console. Technically she was there to monitor the cloaking system's performance at maximum transit velocity, which was a legitimate operational role, but she would have been there even if she had to stand in a corner. She was not going to be anywhere else. She watched the distance counter on the main display count down. She watched the tactical feed from the long-range probes in the Fun system. Updated every 12 minutes, the Vreth fleet repositioning in increments that told a clear story to anyone who understood military doctrine. Frank Torres understood. She could see it in his face, the way he stood at his console, the specific quality of readiness in his body. She thought about the 9-year-old on the kitchen floor. She thought about if anything is out there, anything at all, I want them to hear us. She had heard it. And now she was here, traveling at speed she had helped make possible, toward a system where a species she had never met was trying to hold 12 ships against 40 because there was no one else. There was something enormous in that. She wasn't sure she had words for it yet. Around her, the bridge was alive with the particular controlled activity of a ship moving toward a significant event. People spoke in short, precise sentences. Systems were checked and checked again. Frank Torres ran through tactical scenarios with his team. Priya Mehta monitored the continuing fin broadcasts. Finmarin Soda had not stopped transmitting after receiving the reply, but the transmission had changed. It was more focused now. A directed message aimed at the direction the reply had come from, repeating a set of questions. Who are you? How many ships do you have? Are you armed? Should we respond to those? Priya asked. Cassandra thought for a moment. One response, she said. Answer the third question. Say, yes. Hold your formation. Nothing else. Not who we are? They'll know who we are, Cassandra said, when we arrive. 3 hours out, Captain James Okafor's voice came through on the fleet channel, tight beam encrypted, the 26-ship network that worked even in full cloak. Admiral, I've been running numbers on the Vreth formation. When we decloak at the range and positioning you've specified, their weapon systems will need approximately 90 seconds to reorient from the fin defensive formation to our position. Correct, Cassandra said. In those 90 seconds, if they decide to fire on the fin ships. They won't, Cassandra said. How confident are you in that assessment? 93%, Cassandra said, which was a more specific number than most admirals gave, but Cassandra's tactical assessments were always specific because she believed in being honest about uncertainty rather than performing confidence. They'll be processing what they're seeing. 40 Vreth combat vessels, prepared for a straightforward suppression operation, suddenly facing 26 unknown ships that appeared out of nowhere. The cognitive disruption alone will cost them 40 seconds. Their command culture requires confirmation from Vrethaken before any change of target. That'll take another 30. By the time they have authorization to do anything, we will be talking. And the 7%? Okafor asked. Someone on one of those ships acts without authorization, Cassandra said. In which case we respond and we do it faster than they expect. She paused. James, I've run the numbers. Even at 7% and worst-case response, we handle it. Yes, ma'am, Okafor said. There was a pause. My crew asked me to tell you they're ready. Tell them I know, Cassandra said. Tell them I'm proud of them. 1 hour out, Maya went to the small briefing room adjacent to the bridge where she had been allowed to set up a monitoring station for the cloaking systems. She sat in front of her screens, running diagnostic checks that were not strictly necessary but that gave her hands something to do, and she called her mother. It was the middle of the night in Chicago. Patricia answered on the second ring, because Patricia always answered at any hour when Maya called. Hey baby, Patricia said. Her voice was warm and a little thick with sleep. Hey Mom, Maya said. Pause. Patricia Mercer had spent 30 years reading her daughter. She was the best at it in the world. Where are you? Patricia asked. I can't say exactly. Are you safe? Maya thought about it. I think so. Probably. The people around me are very good at their jobs. Another pause. Is it happening? The thing you've been building toward? Yes, Maya said. Tonight. Yes. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Maya could hear her mother's breathing. Could picture her in the Chicago apartment, the good one, the one Maya had helped with, sitting up in bed. Holding the phone the way she always held it, with both hands. Maya, Patricia said. I need to tell you something. Okay. When you were 9, her mother said, and you built that thing on my kitchen floor and we sat there and listened to that signal, I didn't tell you what I actually thought. What did you think? I thought, Patricia said carefully, that whatever was making that signal had no idea what it had started by letting you hear it. Pause. I thought, whatever is out there, they have no idea what kind of person just found them. She paused again. I still think that, baby. Whatever is out there, they're not ready for you. Maya sat in the briefing room of the largest warship humanity had ever built, 1 hour from the most important moment in human history, and felt something move through her that was not sadness and not pride and not fear and not joy but was some compound of all of them that had no name in any language she knew. I love you, Mom, she said. I love you too, baby, Patricia said. Go show them. Maya hung up. She sat in the briefing room for 30 seconds. She let herself feel exactly what she felt, which was large and complicated and important. And then she got up and went back to the bridge. Van home system steadfast, the hour of decloaking. They arrived precisely on schedule. 26 ships dropping out of transit velocity at the exact coordinates Cassandra had specified, 200,000 kilometers from the Van home planet, directly between the Van defensive formation and the approaching Vreth fleet. The transit itself was silent, invisible, leaving no trace on any sensor system the Vreth employed. One moment the space between the two fleets was empty. The next moment 26 human warships were there. Still cloaked. Still invisible. Still quiet. On the bridge of the Steadfast, every station was manned. Every system was green. The tactical display showed the Vreth formation with beautiful, complete clarity, 40 ships, their positions, their energy states, their weapon charge levels, everything, because they were not cloaked and human sensors saw them perfectly. The Fun defense formation was equally clear. 12 ships in a tight defensive cluster, shields at maximum, clearly pushed to their operational limits. The Vreth were approximately 40 minutes from optimal firing position. 40 minutes. Cassandra stood at the command position. She looked at the display. She looked at Frank Torres, who was watching the Vreth formation with the expression of someone who has done a great deal of thinking about this moment and is now very still because the thinking is done. She looked at Priya Mehta, who had every communication channel open and ready. She looked at Dr. Maya Mercer at the secondary science console, who met her eyes and gave a single, small nod. She looked at her crew. 2,417 people on this ship alone. The best of humanity's best. Chosen and trained and prepared over years and years of work that nobody outside this program would ever know about. They were the edge of the knife that 60 years of silence had sharpened. Frank, Cassandra said. Tactical posture? All weapons to ready state, Frank said. Not armed. Ready. 20-second activation from ready to armed. Good. She looked at Priya. All channels? Open, ma'am. Every frequency in the Vreth communication spectrum. Cooperative diplomatic frequencies. Fan frequencies. Broad spectrum. Everything. Good. She looked at the display for one more moment. She thought about the Fanmarin Soda's transmission. If anyone is listening, please. She thought about the assembly and its debates and its expressions of concern. She thought about 317 people on a station that no longer existed. She thought about Vrethaken's contemptuous exhale. Little water planet. Shouting at the stars. She thought, not shouting anymore. All ships, she said, her voice going out to all 26 vessels on the fleet channel, 2,417 people on this ship and the crews of 25 others, tens of thousands of human beings in the dark, waiting. All ships on my mark. The bridge was absolutely silent. Decloak, she said. All ships. Now. 26 cloaking systems deactivated simultaneously. In the physics of what happened next, the term is emergence. The sudden appearance of a massive energy signature where no signature had existed a moment before. Every sensor system in the Fun system, Vreth and Fun alike, registered the emergence at exactly the same instant. It was technically a detectable event. Something appeared. But the word appeared does not capture what happened. What happened was, 26 warships materialized out of nothing 200,000 kilometers from the Fun home planet, in a formation so precise it looked like it had been drawn by a single hand. They were arrayed in 3 lines, 8 in the front rank, 9 in the second, 9 in the third, and they were facing the Vreth fleet. And the Vreth fleet could now see them, clearly and completely, on every sensor system the Vreth employed. The largest of the 26 ships, the Steadfast, was at the center of the formation. 4 kilometers long. The Vreth sensor analysts would later report, in the post-incident documentation that became one of the most studied documents in cooperative military history, that when they first resolved the sensor signature of the Steadfast they spent approximately 8 seconds assuming there was a sensor error, because the energy readings were inconsistent with anything the Vreth knew a species at Earth's developmental level could build. It was not a sensor error. On the bridge of the Vreth flagship, the Vrethaken, named for its commander in the Vreth tradition of living admirals naming ships for themselves, Supreme Commander Vrethaken stood at his command position and looked at his tactical display and felt something he had not felt in 30 years of commanding the most powerful military force in the cooperative. He did not have a word for it. The Vreth did not have a cultural vocabulary for this specific feeling, because the specific feeling required a situation they had never been in. The closest translation of what he felt in human terms would be, I have made a profound and unrecoverable error. On the Finn defense station, Finmarin Soda stood at her display and looked at 26 ships that had appeared from nowhere between her and the Vreth fleet. She looked at their size, at their configuration, at the energy signatures her systems were reading, clean, powerful technology she did not recognize but could assess in general terms. What, Fantala said beside her very quietly, are those? Finmarin Soda looked at the display for a long moment. Those, she said slowly, are from Earth. Yes, Steadfast bridged the decloaking. The silence that followed the decloaking lasted 47 seconds. Maya counted. 47 seconds in which every Vreth ship was absolutely still on the tactical display. No repositioning, no weapon charging, nothing. 47 seconds in which the Fin defense formation also went still, though for different reasons. 47 seconds in which 26 human warships sat in the perfect dark of a system that was not their own and waited. Then Priya Mehta said, Admiral. Incoming hail. Vreth frequency. Command encryption. Put it through, Cassandra said. Translation system on. The voice that came through the Steadfast bridge speakers was deep, modulated by the translation system into something close to a deep human baritone. The translation system flagged several elements as high-confidence translation and several others as approximate. Emotional tone uncertain. Unidentified vessels, the voice said. This is Supreme Commander Vreth Aiken of the Vreth Directorate. You have entered a restricted system under Vreth Directorate jurisdiction. Identify yourselves immediately and state your purpose. Cassandra looked at the translation. She looked at Priya. Record my response. Translate to Vreth Standard. Standard Cooperative Diplomatic Frequency. Ready, ma'am. Cassandra looked at the main display. At the 40 Vreth vessels. At the 12 Fin ships behind them. At the Steadfast's own position at the point of the human formation. This is Admiral Cassandra Mercer, she said, commanding the United Earth ship Steadfast United Earth Fleet. We are here representing the planet Earth and the human species. You know us as the inhabitants of a Category 7 primitive civilization in Sector 14 Inner. She paused. We are not what your records say we are. Another pause. We have come because we heard a people calling for help. We are here to ensure that the Fon are not harmed further. She looked at the display. Stand down your fleet, Commander Vreth Aiken. Return to your own territory. This is not a request. 47 seconds of silence had preceded this. After this there were 12. Then Vreth Aiken's voice, Admiral Mercer. You are one species commanding 26 vessels. I command 40. I suggest you reconsider your position. Cassandra looked at Frank Torres. Frank was already tracking the Vreth formation. His expression was calm. He shook his head slightly, no change in Vreth weapon status. They were not arming. They were waiting. Commander, Cassandra said, I have spent 14 years studying your fleet doctrine. I know how your ships fight, what their weapon systems can do, and exactly how long it takes your command structure to authorize a change of target order. She paused. I also know that you've had approximately 3 minutes to analyze our energy signatures, and I'm confident your analysts have already told you that you don't fully understand what you're looking at. She paused again. I'm offering you the chance to stand down without learning what you don't yet know. I recommend you take it. Another silence. Longer this time. Then, not on the official channel but broadcast open on every frequency in the system, not encrypted as if Vreth Aiken had made a decision to let everyone hear it. You were listening to us. For how long? 60 years, Cassandra said on the same open frequency. The silence after that was the longest one yet. On the Vreth Aiken, Subcommander Vreth Koss was doing 3 things simultaneously. Running sensor analysis on the human fleet, monitoring the weapon status of every ship in the Vreth formation, and listening to the exchange between his commander and the human admiral with the focused attention of someone who has realized that this moment will be studied for the rest of their career. His sensor analysis was producing numbers he did not like. The 26 human ships were not Category 7 technology. They were not Category 7 by any assessment. Their energy output suggested propulsion systems that the Vreth hadn't matched until 3 generations ago. Their hull composition was deflecting his scanner's penetrating signal in a way that suggested either exotic materials or exotic physics, possibly both. And there was something else, something his analysts flagged with a question mark. A residual energy pattern in the space around the human formation that suggested the ships had only recently become visible, which was technically impossible because you could not have 40 Vreth combat vessels in a system and have 26 ships enter that system undetected. You couldn't. And yet. He pulled up the intercept record from the past 10 minutes. The human ships had not been on any sensor in the system until the moment they appeared. There was no approach signature. No transit signature. They had simply been there. Present. As if they had materialized from nothing. "Commander," he said quietly to Vrethaken, who was still looking at the communication channel with the expression he had never seen on his commander's face before. "My analysis is ready." Vrethaken looked at him. "The human ships," Vrethkos said, "were cloaked." He said it the way you say something that should be impossible. Some form of cloaking technology that defeats every sensor modality we employ. They were here, in this system, before they made themselves visible. He paused. "I don't know how long they were here before they decloaked. It could have been minutes. It could have been longer." Vrethaken was very still. "There's more," Vrethkos said. "They're energy signatures. The ship specifications, they're not Category 7, Commander. They're not even close." He brought up his analysis on the commander's display. "If I had to classify these ships by the cooperative standard scale, I would classify them as late Category 4 to early Category 3. He paused. "They've been advancing in complete silence. For as long as we've been watching them, they've been building." Vrethaken looked at the display. He looked at 26 ships that had been invisible and were now very clearly not. He looked at the numbers that said these ships were not what Earth was supposed to be. He thought about 60 years. He thought about every assembly discussion he had participated in about humanity. He thought about the word wallpaper. He thought about the laughter. He thought about what it meant to laugh at the wrong thing. Back on the Steadfast, Cassandra was waiting. She was very good at waiting. She did not pace, did not fidget, did not check her watch. She stood at the command position and watched the Vreth formation on the display and waited. Maya, at the secondary console, was watching something slightly different. She was watching the Vreth ship's internal energy signatures, a passive scan that could read power distribution through hull emissions without the Vreth being aware of it. She was watching to see if any ship began drawing power to its weapon systems in the specific pattern that meant preparation to fire. None of them were. She thought they're thinking. Then she thought, good. Let them think. Priya's voice, Admiral. Incoming hail from a second source. Fin frequency. Cassandra turned slightly. Put it through. A new voice. Different quality. The Fin language was being translated by a system that had somewhat less practice with it, so the translation was slightly rougher, a little more literal. But it was clear enough. Human vessels. This is Admiral Fin Soda, Fin Defense Command. I received your earlier message. Pause. You came. We heard you, Cassandra said. We said we would come. A longer pause. What? You are not in the cooperative. The Fin are not your allies. We have never had contact with your species. You don't owe us anything. The question was genuine, not accusatory, not suspicious, but genuinely unable to understand the answer. Why did you come? Cassandra looked at the main display. She thought about the right answer. There were several right answers, political answers, strategic answers, philosophical answers. She thought about which one was true. Because you asked, she said. The bridge was quiet. Fin Soda's translation system produced whatever sound corresponded to Fin silence. Then, that is an unusual reason. Yes, Cassandra said. We're an unusual species. On the open channel, the one Vrethaken had broadcast open, a new voice appeared. It was coming from a source that Priya identified after a 5-second analysis as the cooperative assembly relay station in the system, which meant it was going to be received by every species monitoring the assembly channels. This is Delegate Third Current Bright of the Calori Collective, monitoring from the assembly relay. The Calori voice was precise and slightly formal, as Calori voices always were in official contexts. I am formally requesting identification and explanation of the human fleet presence in this system. Further, I am formally requesting a stay of Vreth military action in the Fin system pending assembly review, as the situation has materially changed since the previous assembly discussion. Cassandra listened to this and permitted herself one small, private moment of satisfaction. Then she said, Delegate Third Current Bright. Admiral Cassandra Mercer, United Earth Fleet. We are happy to speak with the Assembly. Please arrange a session. The Assembly session will require. I can wait, Cassandra said. We have become quite good at waiting. She looked at the Vreth formation. In the meantime, the Vreth fleet will please maintain its current position without approaching the Fin home planet or the Fin defense formation. She looked at Frank Torres. Frank was already tracking. He gave her a nod. My tactical officer will notify me immediately if any Vreth vessel begins moving toward the Fin. Pause. And if they do? Delegate Third Current Bright asked. Cassandra looked at the display. We will respond appropriately, she said simply. As we are capable of doing. The delegate absorbed this. Understood, Admiral Mercer. A pause that carried, even through the translation system, a particular quality, the quality of someone registering something very large and very new. I have a great many questions. I know, Cassandra said. There will be time for questions. First, the fun. U.S. Steadfast Van Home System, 4 hours after decloaking. Vrethaken did not contact Cassandra again for 2 hours. In those 2 hours the Vreth fleet did not move. The Fun defense formation maintained its position. The Steadfast and its 25 companion ships held their formation with a precision that, as Vrethkos noted in his internal log, was itself a kind of demonstration. 26 ships holding a geometrically exact formation for 2 hours, every ship maintaining its position to within meters, no drift, no adjustment, just perfect stillness. It was harder than it looked. It required coordination systems and crew training at a level that Vrethkos found himself, privately, deeply impressed by. The assembly was convening an emergency session. The relay feeds from the assembly channel were full of signal traffic as 47 species representatives processed what was happening. Some of them had known about Earth and had had the same casual dismissal of humanity that everyone else had. All of them were now in the position of revising that assessment in real time. It was, Maya thought, listening to the relay traffic at her console, quite something to watch. She could hear the specific quality of adjustment, not panic, not fear, but the rapid, forced recalibration of an assumption that had been so fundamental it hadn't needed to be questioned for decades. Humans. Category 7. She was also tracking something on the Vreth sensor passives. Tracking Vrethaken's flagship specifically. She watched its internal energy distribution pattern, a thing that told you a great deal about what a ship was doing, and more subtly what the people in it were deciding. The flagship's power distribution was changing very slowly, very gradually. Moving away from the offensive configuration it had held when they arrived. Moving towards something more neutral. She keyed the internal channel. Cass. The Vreth flagship is redistributing power. I think he's making a decision. What decision? Cassandra asked. The right one, Maya said. I think. 40 minutes later, the open channel crackled with Vrethaken's voice. Not on the command encrypted frequency. Not on a diplomatic channel. On the open frequency, the one anyone in the system could hear, the one the assembly relay was broadcasting to everyone monitoring. Admiral Mercer, he said. His voice was, the translation system flagged this as emotional tone uncertain, possible components. Acknowledgement, recalculation, formal respect, possible components consistent with significant cognitive dissonance. Maya thought, he's not used to saying this. I am standing down the Vreth fleet, Vrethaken said. All vessels will hold position and await assembly guidance. Pause. I would like to request a private channel for direct communication with you. As equals. As equals. The translation system flagged that phrase with high confidence translation and a note. Phrase carries specific weight in Vreth diplomatic tradition, used when a Vreth commander formally acknowledges parity with a previously unrecognized counterpart. In 63 years of cooperative history, no Vreth Supreme Commander had used that phrase in reference to a species outside the cooperative's top 5 military powers. On the Steadfast bridge, no one said anything for a moment. Then Frank Torres said very quietly, well. Cassandra said, open the channel. The conversation between Cassandra Mercer and Vrethaken lasted 90 minutes. It was not broadcast. It was not transmitted to the assembly. It was a private conversation, translated in real time, between two senior military commanders who had just spent 4 hours on opposite sides of a situation that neither of them had expected to be in. Maya did not hear it. She was not in the room. What she knew of it came from Cassandra's description afterward, and from the official transcript that was eventually released years later, when the political situation had stabilized enough for it. The broad shape of it was this. Vrethaken asked questions. How long had humanity been aware of the cooperative? 60 years, Cassandra told him. How had they developed without the cooperative's knowledge? Carefully she told him. Why had they chosen to reveal themselves now? She told him about the fun. About the station. About 317 people. He was quiet for a while after that. He asked about the cloaking technology. She confirmed it existed. She did not give details. He did not ask for them. He was, she noted in her description to Maya later, not stupid. He understood that asking for details he was not going to receive was pointless, and he had already understood that the capability existed and was effective, and that was the important fact. He asked, what do you want? Cassandra told him, protection for the Fun. Vreth withdrawal from the Fun system. A formal assembly discussion of the status of Earth and humanity. No hostilities. He asked, and if the Directorate cannot accept those terms? She said very simply what she always said in negotiations that had gotten to that point, then we stay here until they can. He asked finally the question that was underneath all the other questions, were you always like this? Or is this what you've built in the time we weren't watching? And Cassandra, who could have answered this many ways, chose to answer it honestly. We were always like this, she said. You just weren't looking. The Vreth fleet began withdrawing from the Fun system 3 hours after the conversation ended. 40 vessels, moving in good order, not hurrying, not disordered. The Vreth were too disciplined for disorder, but moving. Away from the Finn defensive formation. Away from the home planet. Toward the system's jump point. On the Finn defense station, Finmarin Soda watched the Vreth withdrawal on her display. She watched 40 markers moving away. She watched the space between the Vreth and the Finn home planet grow on the display. She watched the 12 ships of the Finn defense fleet. Her 12 ships, which she had known for hours ago, were 12 hours from being destroyed, still intact, still there, still hers. She said nothing for a very long time. Fantala stood beside her. Neither of them spoke. They watched the display together. Finally, Finmarin Soda said, "Get me a channel to the human flagship." "Yes, Admiral." It took 2 minutes to establish. Then, Admiral Mercer's office. A human voice, young, female, slightly formal. Finmarin Soda was not sure what she had expected human voices to sound like. She had not thought about it before now. They sounded, through the translation system, like voices. "This is Admiral Finmarin Soda," she said. "I would like to speak with Admiral Mercer." Pause. Then, "One moment, Admiral." Another pause. Then a different voice, lower, calmer, precise. "Admiral Finmarin Soda. This is Cassandra Mercer." Finmarin Soda looked at the display. The Vreth ships were still moving away. Her 12 ships were still there. "You came," she said. "Yes," Cassandra said. "You didn't know us. We are a small species. We have no military power that could help you. We have nothing to offer you. And you came." She paused. "I need to understand why." A pause on the human side. Then Cassandra said, "Admiral Finmarin Soda. For a very long time my species was told, sometimes directly, sometimes by the way others talked about us when they thought we couldn't hear, that we were small, primitive, not worth attention, not worth help." She paused. "We know what it is to be the species that asks for help and gets debates and expressions of concern and nothing." Another pause. "We decided a long time ago that if we ever had the ability to do something about that, we would." Finmarin Soda was quiet for a long moment. "Your species is not what the cooperative believed you to be," she said. "No," Cassandra said. "We're not." "What are you?" On the bridge of the Steadfast, Cassandra looked at the main display. At the 26 ships of the United Earth Fleet, holding their formation in the Fun system with precise and patient stillness. At the blue marble of Earth, impossibly far from here but connected to everything around her by 60 years of careful, intentional, deliberate work. "We're human," she said. "You'll learn what that means." United Earth Fleet Fun system and beyond the days after. The Assembly emergency session lasted 11 days. It was, by all accounts, the most significant 11 days in the Galactic Cooperative's 400-year history. 47 species, their representatives gathered in the Great Chamber and connected by relay from hundreds of star systems, processed the existence of humanity in a form that no one had anticipated. The United Earth delegation. Yes, there was a delegation assembled with remarkable speed by a government that had been quietly preparing for this moment for decades, a team of diplomats and scientists and legal scholars and translators who had been ready but waiting, attended the assembly session in full. They spoke clearly and without aggression. They presented a factual account of human history, human capability, and human intentions. They also submitted a request. 2 requests, actually. The first request was for Finn membership in the Galactic Cooperative, fast-tracked under emergency provisions with full protections. The second request was for Earth's own formal recognition as a spacefaring civilization, Category 1, with full assembly representation. The debate over the second request was, predictably, contentious. Category 1 recognition was significant. It came with rights, with a seat at the table, with the full weight of the cooperatives, imperfect, inconsistent, but real, collective security structures. Several species objected. Several others raised procedural concerns. The Vreth delegation was notably quiet, which was more significant than any objection. The vote on FIN membership passed with 43 in favor, 4 abstaining, 0 opposed. The 4 abstentions were all species allied with the Vreth Directorate, and their silence was the closest the Vreth could manage to a veto they no longer had the leverage to enforce. The vote on Earth's recognition as Category 1 was 41 in favor, 3 abstaining, 3 opposed. The 3 opposed were also Vreth allies. The Vreth themselves voted in favor. It was the most significant thing Vreth would do in his remaining years as Supreme Commander, and historians would argue about his motivations for all of those years. Some said he voted yes because he had no practical choice. Some said he voted yes because the conversation with Cassandra Mercer had genuinely changed his thinking. Some said he voted yes because he was a military man and military men, when they meet a genuine equal, recognize it. He never said publicly why he voted yes. Maya Mercer was on the Steadfast for the first 3 days of the assembly session. She spent most of that time in her cabin or in the lab she had set up near the engineering deck, doing something she hadn't done in a very long time, just sitting, thinking, not working on a specific problem, just being present in the aftermath of something enormous. On the second day she got a message from Derek Chin, who was still at the Nevada facility, still on her team, still the person who had given her the tour on her first day at Project Vale with that quick smile that could make things feel familiar. The message said, "You actually did it? You crazy brilliant person. You actually did it?" She wrote back, "We did it. Don't let me get all the credit, I'll never let myself live it down." He wrote back, "How does it feel?" She thought about that for a long time. She thought about 9 years old on a kitchen floor. About Dr. Casey's beard and the government people's shoes. About 12 years building the cloaking system. About the final whisper. About Margaret. About the moment the test ship vanished from every sensor in the solar system and the control room erupted and she stood there with tears in her eyes that she did not permit herself to shed in front of anyone because she had learned long ago that she could feel enormous things and still function, which was both a gift and occasionally a problem. She wrote, "It feels like the right thing happened. And then I think about everything that comes next and it feels very large. And then I think about my mother and it feels like something I'd like to sit with for a while before I figure out what to call it." He wrote back, "Take your time. We've got forever to figure out the rest." She smiled. She put the phone down. She looked at the small porthole in her cabin and the black of space and the distant stars. She thought about the signal. The one she had heard at 9 years old, crackling through a box of salvaged microwave parts and a coat hanger antenna. The signal that had been traveling between 2 points that had nothing to do with Earth, that had happened to pass through Earth's neighborhood, that she had happened to catch the edge of. Accidentally, she had told General Crane when he asked how she knew it would work. "The geometry of the wire configuration I used happened to be tuned to the right frequency range. I got lucky." Lucky. Yes. But also, curious. Also, persistent. Also, unable to look at something she didn't understand and walk away from it without trying to understand it. Also, a 9-year-old who had said to her mother, sitting on a kitchen floor, "I think it's from far away." And her mother had sat down on the floor next to her, tired in every bone, and listened. Cassandra Mercer returned to Earth 3 weeks after the decloaking. It was her first time home in 2 years. She landed at a facility in Nevada, the same facility that Project Vale had once been housed in, now repurposed since the project's existence was in the process of being the most significant government secret in history to be officially unclassified, and she was met on the tarmac by General Crane. He was older. She was older. They had not seen each other in person for 14 months. He looked at her for a moment as she came down the ramp from the shuttle. She looked the same as she always did, precise, lean, those green eyes taking everything in. Wearing her uniform. A new set of decorations on it that she hadn't had last time he'd seen her, awarded by a government that was simultaneously trying to keep a 60-year secret and acknowledge one of the most significant military diplomatic operations in history. The decorations were classified, which meant she wore ribbons for things she couldn't tell anyone about. It was a very Cassandra situation, he thought. "Well," he said when she reached the bottom of the ramp. "Well," she agreed. He put out his hand. She shook it. Then, not something either of them usually did, he pulled her into a brief, hard embrace, the kind that has no sentimentality in it but is full of weight. She permitted it and gave it back. 41-3, he said, which was the vote. 41-3, she agreed. They stood on the tarmac in the Nevada afternoon, the desert around them, the sky wide and blue and enormous. "What now?" Crane asked. Cassandra looked at the sky. At the enormous open blue that contained, somewhere beyond its curve, everything that had just happened and everything that was going to happen next. The assembly. The Vreth. The 37 species who had voted yes and the ones who hadn't. The galaxy that humanity had just formally stepped into, not with its hat in its hand but with its full capability, earned and real and declared. Now, she said, we go back. And this time we don't have to cloak. Maya called her mother the day the vote passed. It was afternoon in Chicago. Patricia was home. Maya could hear the television in the background. The news was covering the assembly vote in breathless, continuous loops, with analysis from experts who were doing their very best to explain something they had not known existed 48 hours ago. Mom, Maya said. I'm watching the news, Patricia said. I know. They're calling it the most important moment in human history. I know. Are they right? Maya thought about it. Probably, she said. The Roman Republic didn't know it was the most important moment in Roman history when it was happening either. These things are clearer in retrospect. Patricia laughed. It was her real laugh, full, warm, entirely her. That's my girl. The most important moment in human history, and she's already putting it in historical context. It's how I think, Maya said. I know, baby. Pause. Are you happy? Maya sat with that question for a moment. She was in her lab in the Nevada facility, which was half dismantled and half repurposed, because Project Veil was over and what came next needed new spaces and new names. Around her were 12 years of her work. The cloaking system specifications. The emission suppression designs. The final whisper. The thing she had started building when she was 9 years old on a kitchen floor. Yes, she said. I'm happy. She paused. I'm also thinking about what's next. Patricia laughed again. Of course you are. There's a lot to do. The assembly wants us to share certain things, not the cloaking, not yet, but other things. And there are going to be negotiations and treaties and all of that. And someone needs to figure out how to actually explain to the public, Earth's public, what has been happening for 60 years and why, which is going to be an interesting conversation. Maya, her mother said gently. Yes. Take a breath. Maya took a breath. Now tell me, Patricia said. The signal. The one you caught when you were 9. Do you know yet what it was? Where it was going? Maya was quiet for a moment. Yes, she said. We traced it years ago. It was a routine communication between two cooperative member species, a trade coordination signal. Neither of them knew it passed through our neighborhood. They weren't talking to us. It wasn't meant for us. And you heard it anyway, Patricia said. By accident, Maya agreed. The geometry of the wire configuration. Maya. Her mother's voice was warm and certain. There are no accidents like that. A 9-year-old built something out of a broken microwave in a coat hanger and heard something that nobody else heard. That's not an accident. That's you. Pause. That has always been you. Maya was quiet for a very long time. Outside, across the Nevada desert, the sky was doing what desert skies do at the end of afternoon, turning gold and deep orange at the edges, the blue going deeper and darker toward the zenith. In a few hours it would be fully dark and the stars would be visible, the way they always were out here, clear and thick and seemingly close enough to reach. She had reached them. Not alone. With thousands of people who had believed in the possibility. With General Crane and Cassandra and Derek and Marcus and Aisha and Rosa and Frank and Priya and Patricia and every single person who had ever contributed one piece of the enormous, impossible, carefully constructed thing they had built. But she had started it. On a kitchen floor. At 9 years old. With a broken microwave and a coat hanger and a question she could not leave alone. Mom, she said. Yes. I want to come home for a few days. If that's okay. Baby, Patricia Mercer said with absolute and simple certainty, there will always be a kitchen floor for you to sit on. Epilogue, What the Galaxy Learned. Vrethaken retired from military service 14 months after the decloaking. He spent his remaining years writing a memoir that was widely read in the cooperative and was particularly notable for one passage near the end, which translated roughly as follows. The error was not in failing to detect them. The error was in deciding we had already understood them. We looked at their planet and their early technology and their radio signals and we drew a line from those things to a conclusion, and we thought the line was longer than it was. We thought we had time. We thought we knew the rate of their progress. We thought that because they were quiet in space they had nothing to say. We were wrong about all of it. They were not quiet because they had nothing to say. They were quiet because they were listening. And a species that is listening, truly listening, for 60 years, you cannot imagine what it learns. The Fun joined the Galactic Cooperative as full members in the same session that Earth was formally recognized as Category 1. Funmarin Soda attended the ceremony in person, traveling to the assembly station for the first time in her career. She sat in the great chamber alongside Earth's first official cooperative ambassador, a woman named Dr. Sarah Park, who had spent 20 years as Project Veil's chief diplomatic strategist and who entered the chamber with the specific quality of calm that comes from having prepared for something for a very long time. Fenmar Soda sat beside Dr. Park in the gallery before the session opened, and they talked for 40 minutes about things both important and unimportant. They discovered they both drank too much coffee when they were under pressure. They discovered they both had complicated feelings about the concept of asking for help. Both of them had been in positions where asking for help was a necessity, and both of them had a cultural background that made it feel like a defeat. They discovered they had more in common than either of them would have predicted. "Your Admiral," Fenmar Soda said. "Mercer. What is she like?" Dr. Park considered. "Precise," she said. "Very certain of herself but not arrogant. There's a difference. She knows what she knows and she's honest about what she doesn't. She makes decisions faster than anyone I've ever worked with." She paused. "And she is absolutely unwilling to leave someone behind if she can help it." "I know," Fenmar Soda said. She was looking at the great chamber, the vast ancient space with its curved walls and its rows of species representatives and its long history of decisions that had mattered and decisions that had failed to matter. "I know what she is like." She paused. "She came when we called." "She said you asked," Dr. Park said. "She said that was enough." Fenmar Soda was quiet for a moment. Then, "In my experience, that is never enough for most species." "No," Dr. Park agreed. "It isn't." She looked at the chamber. "That's why we wanted to be different." In Chicago, on a Tuesday evening, Patricia Mercer sat on her kitchen floor. She had not sat on the kitchen floor in 30 years. Her knees were not what they had been, and her back had opinions about it. But she sat down, leaning against the cabinet, and Maya sat next to her, the way they had sat when Maya was 9 years old, leaning against her mother's legs while the television played in the next room. The television in the next room was playing the news. The news was, as it would be for the foreseeable future, dominated by one story. The assembly. The vote. The fleet. The VREF. The 60 years. The cloaking. All of it, every piece of it, being parsed and analyzed and debated and wondered over by 8 billion people who were experiencing the single largest expansion of their understanding of their place in the universe that had ever occurred in recorded human history. In the kitchen it was quiet. Maya leaned against her mother. Patricia put her hand on her daughter's head, the way she had when Maya was small. They sat like that for a while. "Do you still have the box?" Patricia asked. "The microwave box?" "Yes." Maya thought about it. "I think it's in storage somewhere. In Nevada." "You should find it," Patricia said. "They'll want it eventually. For a museum." Maya laughed. It surprised her, a big laugh, real and warm. "A museum," she said. "The girl who heard the signal," Patricia said. "The 9-year-old who built something from nothing and caught the edge of a conversation that wasn't meant for her. And then decided to answer it." She paused. "Yes. Museum." Maya shook her head, smiling. "It was an accident." "I know," Patricia said the way she always said it, with absolute, unmovable certainty. "Everything important starts that way." Outside, the Chicago evening was doing what Chicago evenings do. A little cool, a little wind, the light going orange and then purple over the flat horizon of the city. The stars were not visible yet, drowned in the city's light. They were always there, though. They were always there. One of them, approximately 847 light-years away, in a direction you would not be able to point to without very specific coordinates, was the location of the Vreth home system, where a retired admiral was writing his memoirs about the day he learned what silence could mean. Another, 11 light-hours in the opposite direction, was the Fun home system, where Fenmar Soda's 12 ships were still in formation, still her 12 ships, because something had happened that had not been supposed to happen and it had changed everything. And one of them, not 847 light-years, not 11 light-hours, but 8 light-minutes from Chicago, a yellow star of ordinary size and temperature and age, was the sun, around which turned a blue-green planet, on which lived 8 billion people who had just learned that the universe was very full of other people, and that for 60 years while everyone else was laughing, their own kind had been in the quiet dark, building something extraordinary. Building the answer to a signal they were never supposed to hear. Preparing the words for a conversation that the galaxy had not expected them to be able to have. Getting ready for the moment when the silence would end. HFY, from this moment on, everything is different. And it was.